Writing here will probably be my last action as a living being. It might seem like a waste of time, but I have nothing else to do. My whole team is gone, killed by the government, or worse. I don't know how long it'll take them to find me, but I need to spread the word. I need someone else to know. I owe Dr. Zuri that much. Kendra Zuri was one of the most brilliant geographers in the world, and I decided for my graduation dreaming to study under her. I'm not a geographer, but my field of biochemistry is completely influenced by her. During my college years, we had a perfect student-teacher relationship. Just 2 years after I had finished my studies, she quit teaching. I reached out to ask her why, and Kendra told me about her plans to lead a thorough field research on the Guarani Aquifer. Discovered a little over 20 years ago, and there's still a lot about it that we don't know. A few months earlier, a fellow of hers discovered a small cave in Argentina, where the level of water was high enough to observe the aquifer, and gave her this tip before publishing a paper mentioning it. His work was actually related to rocks, so he didn't pursue it deeper. Geographers believe that aquifers are the future of potable water. But of course, there are a lot of concerns involving it, like saltwater, metal contamination, the negative impacts drainage might cause, and so on. And so it absolutely needs more studying. To sum it all up, Dr. Zuri had the perfect timing to explore such a place. Needless to say, I quit my life to follow my master as her scientific assistant. She was a simple-minded woman in some ways, ignorant to most bureaucratic procedures. I helped her gather funds for her research, using an important name she didn't know that she had, and we formed a 5-people team. We were 2 European researchers, a Chilean diver, a Brazilian nurse, and a US military, lodged in the closest village. The first few weeks of our job were easy. We were to simply monitor the groundwater using machinery. Vicente, our diver, merely had to take the cables underwater then bring them back every 24 hours, while Dr. Zuri took notes. Everybody had a lot of free time. Vicente was a nice, talkative short man. His size was perfect for diving anywhere. He didn't speak anything but Spanish, but seemed to be catching a few English words here or there. The nurse, Rita, was a grumpy and disagreeable middle-aged woman. But we needed somebody who knew what to do in case we got hurt. And she also functioned as a translator to Spanish and as a local guide, so I couldn't complain. She was unpleasant but useful. The military. Lieutenant Daniels was such a lovely fellow that it was easy to forget that he was there to make sure nothing harmful happened to the imperialist agenda. That's how we got so much funding and nice equipment, after all. Daniel stayed out of the way, limiting himself to patrol the area around our little inn and around the cave, always talking in code over his little radio thing. Despite the hot and wet weather, everything was fine. No one got seriously injured. The local people didn't bother us and the team got along well enough. Things started to go to shit quickly when Kendra and Vicente disappeared for 3 days. I just woke up and they weren't there, and the old lady at the inn front desk said that they had left hours ago. Rita was specifically moody because she was the one who needed to ask the locals if they saw our 2 companions. Extremely nervous, I drove to the cave, but I found no evidence that they had been there. In the end, I asked Daniels to ask for help, and so he requested a helicopter to search for them. And in a helicopter they arrived, Vicente looking utterly disoriented, Dr. Zuri in a bad shape, each of them escorted by 2 stolid and inhumanly tall soldiers. Vicente was deposited on the floor like a 5-year-old boy. At least let me grab a change of clothes. Kendra, the ever-charismatic Kendra, somehow made the men let go of her for a whole minute. It was what she needed. I'm so sorry that I made your life harder, Elle. She hugged me and stuck a flask in my pocket. You are leaving to your countries. The research is over, one of the soldiers said. His English had a hint of Russian in it. Your cars are on their way to pick you, and this one will come with us. She needs medical care. And just like that, they took my master from me. This was the last time that I ever saw her. As soon as the men left, Vicente started talking non-stop. It took me a lot of persuasion to make Rita translate his words to me. This is approximately what he said. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you that I was teaching Dr. Kendra how to dive. She begged me not to. She really wanted to go down there and see it for herself, and so we went. We should have told you. I'm really sorry. But hear me. The water there is not like anything I've seen before. It's eerie and otherworldly. Doc would know how to explain it better. It just feels like it's not from this world. You have to take me there, I asked, but Daniel stopped me. We have to leave now. We can't go with them, and of course, they will be monitoring the entrance to the aquifer. Aren't you one of them? I asked. I'm American and military, alright, but sure as hell, they are willing to sacrifice me with you all. So everybody grab your damn bags now. We hurriedly paid some money to a local man that had an old, battered Jeep, threw away our cell phones to avoid being located, and then traveled through the night. Our destination didn't matter. We just needed to run away. Daniels and I took turns behind the wheel, while our South American companion slept. Vicente was terribly tired. I wanted so bad to wake him up and ask more details about the diving, but he seemed so frail and drained. And besides, I didn't understand Spanish, so I would need Rita too. After 6 long hours on the road, and mostly off it, we made it to a city and each of us hopped on different buses, never to see each other again. I didn't dare go back to my country. Instead, I decided to blend in and live in Sao Paulo. I figured it would be hard to find me in such a big city. It was there that I finally had access to a decent laboratory, and I was able to analyze the sample that Dr. Zuri had given me. And the results, I don't know what to do with them. There was something weird in the water composition. After performing countless tests, I was able to determine that it was probably some kind of poisoning, but nothing like I had seen before. Maybe the water was contaminated by something underneath that I didn't know of. I thought about it constantly, but I had no one to discuss it with. I missed her. Sao Paulo isn't a coastal city, but it's pretty close to the sea, and so I decided to take diving lessons. I had to go back to Argentina somehow and see the aquifer for myself. Maybe it would help me understand what the mysterious component was. And then one day, out of the blue, Daniels barged into my office. His large figure seemed to fill up the entire room. For a while I was scared, but his demeanor was friendly and far from menacing. How did you find me? I asked, surprised. Oh please, do you really think dissidents like me never thought of joining forces in order to survive? He smiled, lovely as always, and then suddenly gave me an awkward hug. I'm happy you're still alive. Does that mean? Yes, unfortunately. Rita was killed hours after we went separate ways. Poor Vicente was captured back in his hometown. He was tortured to tell them what he saw down there. I'm so sorry that I called him there. I was naive in following orders. Daniels wiped a tear as I realized he was holding a bunch of Polaroid pictures. In one of them, you could see Rita's lifeless body, throat sliced from side to side. On another, poor little ever-smiling Vicente in shackles, his head shaved with half of his teeth missing. I averted my gaze. I suppose you didn't come all the way down to Brazil just to see if I was alive. He gave me a sad smile. I'm here because I believe Dr. Zuri snuck something to you. And clearly it was something very wrong regarding the aquifer, or else the study wouldn't be terminated like that. Am I right? I refused to answer, so he went ahead. You're clever. I would dare to say gifted. But you're alone and your equipment here isn't exactly top-notch. Come with me and you and my people, and we can figure things out together. You're crazy if you think I can trust you. Why not? Didn't I take us from the lion's den? And 2 out of 3 people were killed after you did that. How do I know you didn't lead us to death on purpose? He shrugged. That's a fair assumption. I would love for that to be true because it would mean that I didn't fail Vicente and Rita. I'll give you some information and you see if it's worth giving me yours, okay? Fine. On that fateful day, Dr. Zuri was just driving Vicente to the cave, but something caught their attention. Something very mundane, but it felt out of place. It was a well. They decided to stop and take a look, and it turns out that it was no ordinary well. It was another entrance to the aquifer. So what? That is the one that they used to dive, and then they got out on a second well, miles and miles away from the first, and that's how it took them that much time to make it back. Both wells are being guarded by US soldiers, but they still don't know about the cave. I thought that his information was worthy of my flask of contaminated aquifer water. I explained to Daniels what little I had disclosed, and inquired him if he had been there again. He told me no, but a former military diver was interested in heading to the small village, and then he said goodbye, promising me to let me know if his group made any progress regarding the sample that I gave him. I immediately packed up my things and made my way back to Argentina. Things become harder to explain and more surreal as my mind tries to recall what I say. I'm not crazy. I know that I'm not crazy because the government is after me, and someone else is after me too. I decided not to stay at the only inn in the village, but to camp in the woods. Daniel's friends apparently had the same idea, and we soon knew who each other was. I don't even remember his name. I was with him just for a few hours, and we didn't talk much as we prepared to submerge. We dived. The American diver seemed to be incredibly experienced, but his face betrayed shock and bewilderment. Everything down there was just like Vicente had described, eerie and otherworldly, a translucent shade of blue that I had never seen. I don't know how much time we spent there before a weird light coming from underneath caught our attention. We headed there, the American diver leading the way. And then some sort of javelin came from the light and pierced his torso. He tried to break the weapon, but his body started to bleed and go limp. I started to approach him, swimming precariously because my whole body was trembling. But he sensed my movement and was still composed enough to gesture me to stop. He had seen something. From the light came a man. He was a normal man, no ghoul, fish humanoid or alien, but well built and tan. He wasn't using any diving equipment, and his body painting and what little clothing he wore seemed to indicate that he was some sort of aboriginal sagamore. He quickly swam towards the American diver, and for the first time, I actually looked below me. Inside the light, I saw a world upside down. It was like we were inside some sort of lake, and coming from beneath me, there were inverted trees and an inverted blue sky with an inverted sun. It was like that was the right direction, and I was the wrong one. The other place, the other side, it felt so much more real than mine for a moment. I was equally mesmerized and confused by the sight. The tan man viciously took the javelin from the American diver, letting him to bleed profusely to death and to come after me. The diver, barely hanging on to life, did his best to slow him down, while I desperately swam upwards. Despite the diver's efforts, the tan man was almost reaching me. I could already feel the disturbance of his large body in the water near me. The tan man finally seemed to be out of breath and he started to swim back to the light where he came from. I watched from afar as from the other side, he seemed to get out of the water. There was a clear limit between water and sky, and the diver's body floated upside down to me in it. I barely remember how I left the cave. All I know is that I hopped in my car, scuba suit and all, leaving my tent and all my unpacked stuff behind, trembling in terror. And I didn't stop driving until I made it to Buenos Aires. I checked into the first hotel that I found, and confirmed my first terrible suspicion. My left heel got injured while I was down there, and I was bleeding. I started to feel drowsy, and I did my best to make myself a tourniquet. It's not safe for me to go to the hospital. It's not safe for me to go anywhere. I started to collect my thoughts. The water is poisoned. The US government knows it and it doesn't want people to find it out, but it's easy to discover it. So the poison is not the reason why the study was terminated. The light is. They know there's another reality upside down. But why? The missing piece of the puzzle came to me when the phone rang.
Is this L, friends with Mr. Daniels, the scientist?
The efficient voice of a very young woman reached my ears. This was the exact line Lieutenant Daniels had established as the safe code. Yes, that's me. Amidst my despair, I felt happy. Hopeful even.
Thank God. I've been trying to reach out to you for 3 weeks. Sorry, but where have you been? I just want to let you know that they got Mr. Daniels and he's dead.
She made a respectful pause.
We analyzed your sample and we were able to determine that the poison was added to the water, but its nature is still unknown. Do you have any progress to report?
3 weeks? What day is today?
Halloween is tomorrow, miss.
That's it. My scuba diving tank couldn't last longer than 2 hours, and I headed to the cave on the same day of my arrival. It isn't humanly possible that I spent 3 weeks there. Unless I was somewhere the time goes by differently, in the border between this world and another. A world that is having its water stolen by us. A world that has poisons that we don't know. Remember the most basic war strategy. Poison your enemy's water. A million thoughts went through my head as I told her everything, what I saw and what I concluded. She thanked me emphatically, assured me that I'm not crazy and that some researchers at the Floridian Aquifer system suspected the same, but their study was terminated as well. And then I started typing this, doing my best to fight the drowsiness. I just need to finish it and say it again. Aquifers don't exist. We are just stealing water from another world, and they are fighting back and slowly killing us. I can't help but smile now. It will be so funny when the soldiers come for me and I'm already dead because of the poison. It still counts as being murdered, but at least it will be a peaceful death.